Am I the a-hole for telling my fiancé that his best friend cannot come to the wedding? I'm 26 female and my fiancé 27 male are planning our big day, summer 2021. He wanted to ask his best friend, John, 27 male, to be best man and I vetoed it. John dated my sister, 28 female, back in college. Is how I met my fiancé, and they ended it on a pretty bad note. My sister's my maid of honor, and I didn't want there to be tension at the altar. And my fiancé understood that and John was cool with it. I just didn't want any drama. Last Friday, my sister was over visiting me. Fiancé was working, and she said, I heard John's going to be at the wedding. I don't think I want to go with him there. And although I can understand why my fiancé wanted John to be there, I wanted my sister there even more. So I assured her that I would talk to my fiancé about this. Later, when fiancé came home, I sat him down and talked about the previous discussion I had with my sister. And to say the least, he was not okay with it. Saying stuff like, first, not best man, fine. Not a groomsman? Okay, whatever. But now I can't even be at the wedding? No. I told him I'd rather have my sister than John, a person that isn't even related to you at the wedding, and I pleaded he would at least hear me out. He didn't. He left the house and had been crashing at John's place since. I don't know. Am I the a-hole here? Like, it makes sense to me. Blood sister outweighs best friends, right? Just wanted some outside perspective from internet strangers. I hate airing drama to people I actually know. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. You're the a-hole. Unless John did something criminal to your sister, you should blame her for not putting you first on your wedding day. Because right now, you aren't putting your sister over John. You're putting your sister before your fiancé. Edit to add. Willing to change my vote if OP's sister has a valid reason to not want to be around John. OP says sister cheated on John and he left her. You're the a-hole. The sister should have lost maid of honor when she complained. She was the cause of the problems in the relationship. I can't believe the audacity that she thinks she can dictate who is there to support the groom, let alone have sole control of the guest list. I'll take sweepstakes on the groom dumping her entitled behind within 3 years. You're the a-hole, obviously. OP, your fiancé might be lucky and can avoid marrying someone with as low morals as you. Your sister cheated on John, and he is getting punished because your sister couldn't keep her loose legs closed? You're the a-hole. Actually, the biggest a-hole is your sister. She's demanding that another guest cannot attend because that is outside her comfort zone. Tell your sister that is not her wedding. Your fiancé has already acquiesced and had John step down as a groomsman. You need to shut your sister down and remind her that it isn't her wedding, and she's not going to be calling the shots. From OP's comments, emphasis mine. To give more context about that, my sister cheated on John and he ended it. My sister says it's just too awkward to be around him, which I can understand. I don't think they would actively fight each other. The last time they were in the same room, a barbecue we had before COVID, they just stayed polar opposite of each other. But I want my sister to be there for me, and I didn't think uninviting John would cause fiancé to react how he's reacting. You're the a-hole. Wow, OP. This is his best friend since kinder, and yet you somehow, I didn't think uninviting John would cause fiancé to react how he's reacting. What did you think would happen? Yeah, obviously your cheating sister shouldn't have to feel uncomfortable. Next story. Am I the a-hole for making my sister leave my wedding reception after her son acted up during my ceremony? I got married this past Saturday. It was a very small affair with less than 70 people in attendance. I opted for a child-free wedding due to both costs and convenience. I like kids, just not at my wedding. Most people were fine with the child-free aspect. The wedding was announced a year in advance, so most people could find accommodations. The problem is my sister, who was one of 4 bridesmaids. She has 2 boys. One is 2 and other is 5. Thursday, she drops that her sitter fell through, and she asked for them to be allowed at the wedding. I felt pressured, but she begged for them to come. I told her as long as they behaved, and her husband kept an eye on them. She was late getting to the venue because the boys were fuzzy getting ready, so she's only in a handful of the getting ready pics. Fine, okay. Then the ceremony itself happened, and my nephew, younger one, began to act up during the vows. My husband and I wrote our own, and about halfway through mine, he begins to cry and fuzz. My brother-in-law grabbed him and very awkwardly made his way out, with my older nephew behind telling his brother to shush. I had to restart my vows twice due to the disruption. I was already nervous. The venue was outdoor as well, so we could hear my nephew fuzzing for a while until my brother-in-law got them a good distance away. I didn't see this at the time, but according to the best man, my sister was dramatically shooing her husband out. After the ceremony itself, my sister vanished for a while, so we were held up with the wedding party photos again. After the pictures, my sister didn't even say anything. No apology, nada. After the first dances, she finally came up and was like, haha, sorry about nephew. It was nap time. He's settled now. It was such a non-apology and I was so upset. I told her I didn't like how dismissive she was of my wedding and how I broke my own rule to accommodate her family and she didn't seem to care. She said she was sorry again, but I was blowing things out of proportion and how it wasn't as big of a disruption as I was making out to be. I was just boiling at this point. I'd asked her to please go. I didn't want her there anymore. She and our mom was upset, and she was acting like a victim. She and I still haven't talked. I've had a lot of people, mostly friends, say I was in the right. But my family seems to think I'm a bridezilla because the disruption had already happened and I was just punishing them. I'm not angry at my nephew. I'm angry at myself for bending on my child-free rules and my sister for everything, especially her half-baked apology. She's an a-hole for bringing them and making you feel pressured when you already set up boundaries and preferences for that situation exactly. Not an a-hole. Maybe it's me, but I would have told her, sorry if you can't find a sitter. Then you or brother-in-law have to miss out. I already am anxious enough I don't need to risk a speech disruption. Maybe then you'd have been made out to be a bridezilla too though. It is a big deal. A deal that only happened because she made you, which she basically did. I hope you could have said no, but then sister/family would have probably went off about that, and she'd have more drama right before the wedding. Make an exception on your day, and it's ended up interrupting your vows. She proceeds to give a pathetic attempt at an apology to save face, but seems to be vaguely gaslighting you in the process, which is why I guess you ended up asking her to leave, because who does that on a day like that? At least fake through an apology and accept responsibility. This is why I opt for eloping. Haha, can't win for losing. I originally wanted to elope, but it just never seems to happen that way. Part of the post I had to remove was that I originally told her she could bring them to the reception only, but not the ceremony. She really pleaded for them to come to both, and like an idiot, I agreed. 2 infants were also in attendance, a 10-month-old and 4-month-old, my husband's cousin's kid and a friend's child respectively. But during the ceremony, cousin's wife watched the babies in the bridal suite. I was gonna let my brother-in-law do the same, but my sister didn't want him to miss the ceremony. Not the a-hole. Shocked at the number of your a-hole replies here. I don't love traditional weddings, I don't understand not inviting kids, but it's your day. You gave people a year of advance notice, and you actively tried not to be a bridezilla by accommodating your sister's kids. She should never have put you in that position. Not the a-hole. It's unfortunate she couldn't find accommodations, but couldn't her husband just have taken care of them at home? You held up your wedding multiple times for it, and honestly, I'd want to be done with it all too. She knew it was nap time, and instead of having her child sleep it off somewhere with her husband, she brought the child to your vows so he could scream like every child does when they're tired. The wedding was over, she got to attend, that's really the end of it. The reception is just eating dinner and some dancing anyway. Wait, you're right. She probably knew the baby would get fuzzy at the time of the ceremony. Sister is either lazy, selfish, or plotting. While I understand parenting is hard, I feel like she could have managed to figure this stuff out. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I don't think this was some nefarious or ill-intentioned thing. We don't have a bad or strained relationship. She has no reason to purposely sabotage me. It's absolutely possible to do something in accident and still be a jerk. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my mom's husband his hurt feelings aren't my job to fix? My 34 male baby sister 24 female is getting married. Our dad died when I was 15 and she was 5, and our mom remarried to Roger when I was heading off to college. My sister came to me recently and asked if I would do the traditional father of the bride stuff at her wedding. She said having me to do it was the closest to having dad, and I agreed. I was so damn happy and honored, and my baby sister means everything to me. Only, Roger is pissed and hurt that he was overlooked and wasn't asked to any kind of parent of the bride role in the wedding. Roger came to me about 2 weeks ago when my sister started doing some of the planning, and he told me he was hurt that his daughter didn't want him to do it, and was instead overlooked for a brother who, while close to her, didn't raise her like he did. And that the same could be said for her want of a connection to our dad. That he was the one who raised her, not dad, and he felt like he was being pushed aside for a ghost. He went on and on about his feelings, and he asked me to do him a solid and tell her to get him instead. I told him no, and that his hurt feelings aren't my job to fix. He said my response was very cold, and my mom is hurt I didn't put more of an effort in to encourage my sister to include him. She wanted me to want my sister to have her living dad be there for this important moment and this important role. I have family weighing in left and right, and honestly, I am pissed. The reason I am approaching this post at all is my grandpa, who I love and trust as much as almost anyone, told me I could have been more sensitive in my rejection to his request. And while he couldn't judge harshly, the man had done his best to be there for my sister. So tell me, people of Reddit, am I the a-hole? Edited to add, he and I had a very rough start. It is in my mom's wedding, at the reception actually. He asked me to start calling him my sister's dad, because he felt it would help her frame it that way, and because I'm married to your mom now and will be raising your sister as my daughter, and I feel like it is better now that we start as we mean to proceed. He was not happy when I told him no, though he never did breathe a word to my mom about that encounter either. We had a fight of sorts a few years later, because I chose to attend a party in my dad's family versus attending a funeral for someone in his. I'm not sure about my sister. I just know she never ever liked him calling himself her dad, and she never saw him as her dad. Now for the top comments. Not the hall. This isn't even your call. This is your sister's decision. Have your family talk to her, or better yet, they should accept that she has made her choice and they can all deal with it. They are all adults, as is she. Your family is being petty about their own feelings. This is about your sister and her wants. You were right that stepdad's feelings are not your responsibility. Yeah. What if the brother said okay and told his sister he wouldn't do it and why? I can't imagine her response would be to then ask her stepfather. If it was me, my next decision would be to have no one do it. Not they whole. Although I agree with your grandpa, he could have been more sensitive. It's not reasonable for him to ask you to tell her to get him instead, but it is reasonable to feel hurt, and you could have acknowledged that. Maybe he should have been more sensitive as well, though. He didn't raise her, I did, is a very messed up thing to say about her dead father. It's not like the man was a deadbeat and left. He died, and Roger didn't come into the picture until she was 8. Did he really expect Obi to give a cordial reaction when what he said was low-key disrespectful? Not they whole. Your sister wants you to walk her down the aisle. It's her wedding, and it's what she wants. Period. Roger needs to stop making it all about him and start acting like that father claims to be and accept her decision. Right now, he's acting like a whiner. The last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for losing my cool on my father-in-law after he said no alcohol at my wedding? Context. Me, 28 male, and my fiancée, female 23, are getting married this summer. Wedding planning already started, and we're both paying for everything. No outside help. I get along with my fiancée's family, but my only issue is with her recovering alcoholic dad. The guy's basically a punk. He did it all. Stole, cheat, went to jail. He's the your mom was my girlfriend type of guy. What can I say? It's a small town, everyone knows each other. My fiancée is his only daughter, and she's always worrying too much about him, helping him with money, helping him with his living situation, and supported him in his recovery. We remain civil for the sake of all that's holy, but disagree often. He sat me down days ago to tell me about his journey in recovery and how challenging his experience was. He said he wants no alcohol at the wedding whatsoever. I was taken aback. I said that's not gonna work for me and my family. He said it's okay, we can have alcohol after the wedding is over. So after everyone has left? Absolutely not. I told him I'm sorry if he has an issue with alcohol at the wedding, but it's the norm, and he shouldn't dictate the wedding just because he thinks he needs to be accommodated. He said firmly that he doesn't understand why I'm choosing to satisfy my family, who can't spend one night without drinking liquor that tastes like urine to be my hill to die on. Funny coming from the man who gave up all he had for a drink. But let's not be so mean right now and weaponize his past. It's just one night is right. But of all nights, this is legitimately the night where alcohol should be available since, it's a celebration. Long story short, he went on about me, making the whole wedding about me and my family when I shouldn't. I flipped the hell out, lost my cool and told him it doesn't get a say. We argued till we were blue in the face and he refused to stand down. When I shouted that I'd uninvite him, he shouted back that that's his only daughter and he should be present at her wedding. I spoke to my fiancée. She says she's torn on this issue since she's happy and proud of her dad's progress and wants him to be at her wedding, and I shouldn't have spoken to him this way. My in-laws calling me an a-hole for taking my father-in-law's recovery lightly and refusing to do as suggested. I am the a-hole? Someone in recovery should know that an addict cannot expect everyone to accommodate their addiction. He can stay home if it's too hard to be at the wedding. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. My stepdad is an alcoholic, and he never asked me about this. He knew I was having booze at my wedding, and it was up to him to do what he needed to do to stay clean. Between my stepmother, in-laws, and my mom's family, no way was I doing that sober. My wife and I are both alcoholics in recovery, and we had an open bar at our wedding for our guests. Also, an exit plan. Always an exit plan. Not today, Hall. But your another poster is missing the forest for the trees. Alcohol at the reception is the trees. The forest? You got a big forest. Think about these statements and what they foreshadow for your married life. My fiancé is always worrying too much about him, helping him with money, helping him with his living situation. And your big fight with her dad? She says she's torn on this issue, and I shouldn't have spoken to him this way. You and her need to settle the issue of her dad's place in your lives, and how you are going to settle disputes that involve him in the future. This, 100% not the a-hole. And I definitely agree that Opie needs to have a conversation with fiancé. They need to set boundaries regarding father-in-law now before they get married and are legally tied together, because this could cause loads of contention down the road if hard lines aren't set in place. Not the a-hole. The wedding is about you and your fiancé. You get to decide details. Am I the a-hole for not using my inheritance money to help my brother and his family out? Background. Me 19 female and my brother 32 male became orphans 10 years ago due to an accident our parents were in. My parents had always been a bit paranoid when it came to their mortality, so they had set a plan in case they passed. They left a significant amount of money for each of us, and our childhood home was meant to be mine. They specified that we would have access to our share of the will when we turn 18, and since my brother was already old enough, he took his money and cut all contact with me. I'd lived with my grandparents ever since, but last year I finally got my share, so I decided to move into the house and use the money to pay for my studies. I'm in first year of medicine, and it is very expensive. I have estimated that when I finished medicine in 5 years, I'll have a lot of money left to continue with what I want to specialize in, and have some left. My grandparents know my plan, and offered to help with my living expenses, so my inheritance becomes exclusive for my studies until I finish. I accepted, and we have been like this for a year. Now to the issue. My brother and his wife have 3 children from ages 9, 7, and 4. My brother spent his inheritance money on a house, his wedding, cars, and expensive stuff that one doesn't really need to live. My sister-in-law is a stay-at-home mom, so he was the breadwinner. My brother recently lost his job, so now their family's struggling and they need a place to stay. He contacted me to ask for us to meet up. When I arrived, he and his wife were already sat down at a restaurant. Long story short, they said that since they were going through hard times, they expected me to hand them over my house and give them a share of my inheritance so they can get back on their feet. I got pissed off since we have barely talked or visited each other since the accident, and they were just demanding me to pay for them. I told them that I wouldn't, because I already have a plan for the money and I was living on the house. They said I can move back with my grandparents, and blew off at me for being selfish. After arguing, I decided to leave, but now my cousins are saying I'm inconsiderate a-hole and I should help family out. I really need to know if I'm in the wrong, so am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. He has squandered his money. He will squander yours too. Then you'll both be broke. Be responsible with your money, so at least one of you will be financially solvent. Not to mention the fact that OP's parents died. Entire world turned upside down at 9 years old and then the brother leaves as well. Now said brother is calling OP a selfish a-hole? Wow. You're not the a-hole, OP. But now my cousins are saying I'm an inconsiderate a-hole and I should help family out. Tell your cousins to offer their homes instead if they actually care that much. Not the a-hole. Also, your brother should have downsized by selling off the few expensive stuff he has left to get some money and then imposing on you. Honestly, the audacity. Not the a-hole. Girl, you shouldn't even be here. He got contact with you and now expects your help? No way. I am begging you to not hand over a cent. He sounds like the type to be given a step and then suddenly take a mile. You owe him nothing. His family is not your responsibility the slightest, so do not allow him to guilt you. Biologically, you're related, but they're not family. And your brother made that decision a long time ago. People love burning bridges not realizing they'll regret it. Thank you. I am confused as to why Cut contacted the first place. But it's been a decade and I wonder if this will help me build a relationship with him. It will not. As soon as the money's gone, he will be too. Not the a-hole. Now go get those degrees. Thank you. It'll take a lot of time and money, so I can't really afford to pay for him. Besides, if I give him money, I'll have to find another job and it's not the best option with my career choice. If you can't find a job, then so can your brother. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to accommodate my brother's kid ever again? My 17 female older brother, 32 male, has a kid, 3 male, and he treated as the pride and joy of our family because due to some fertility issues they took 6 years of trying without success. Now that my nephew is here, his parents let him do anything he wants at everyone's expense. My mother had to remove every decoration she had around the house because my nephew used to play with it and wouldn't understand a no. Every little piece she had around the house holds sentimental value, and she had to put it away in order to keep letting my nephew be here because my brother refused to teach him some manners. I couldn't do my homework in the kitchen because my nephew would come and try to take my things because he wanted to play with them. And even when my brother and his wife hated it, I started to not let him do it, moving him aside or just fight with my brother until he came and took his child. During one of those things, my nephew broke my computer. And I made my brother pay for a new one because I refused to let my dad do it since he wasn't at fault. My brother tried to lecture me about not leaving my laptop there because I knew how his kid was. And I told him to not mess with me and to raise my nephew better or he will be paying for things more expensive than that. My nephew also comes into my room anytime he wants. And I hate when he does that. When he was younger and I had to go to class, I would always tell my brother that my nephew wasn't allowed to come to my room ever. But he would open the door for him and let him wander around just because he could. Now I'm always telling my nephew to get out. And I usually close the door, but he cries and screams all the time. I had enough, so I told my brother to stop expecting me to accommodate this child. If I let my Switch, my laptop, or any of my things around the house, I expect them to be where I left them. Because this is my house, and I should be comfortable in my own house knowing that my stuff won't get damaged. And if my nephew does something to them, he has to pay. Always. And that he was a crappy father for refusing to raise him well. Not stay home. Swap out your doorknob for one with a key lock. Lock it when you leave. I had to do this as a teen to keep my thieving sister out. My son acted better at 2, and he was redirected as often as it was necessary. Yes, when you have little visitors over a lot, you make some concessions and move things up higher until they're a little older. But you should not give in to 3-year-old terrorists just because they have lazy parents. Not stay home. If this child is the pride and joy of the family, then his parents should raise him to be that. It takes work. Sounds like his parents are lazy. They call it spoiled for a reason, because you ruined the child for his future success. If you don't give a child consistent consequences for bad behavior, they will never learn any self-discipline, and that is disastrous. I realize you can't slap their hands anymore, but that is what we used to do when children touched things they weren't supposed to. It worked. Now it's more work. You have to physically move them away. Give them something else they are allowed to have, give them time out, and reward for good behavior. Tell your brother to quit being so lazy. He's not doing his son or himself any favors. Next thing you know, he'll get kicked out of nursery school because he doesn't know how to listen. Then kindergarten. Then other kids' families won't want him over to play. That's exactly what my dad has tried to tell them, but they won't listen. My sister-in-law is a stay-at-home mom, and they spend a lot of time in our house because my mom loves to have my nephew around. But she just mostly sits with her phone and expects us to look after him. Most of the time, my nephew will be doing something he's not allowed to do in front of her, with my mom telling him no and she won't lift a finger. I know that 3-year-old tends to be all over everything, but my point is that they won't teach him not to do it. My brother especially tends to let him around my stuff, or my room, just because he knows it pisses me off. My parents usually go easy on him because he took so long to have a kid and is trying to enjoy him. But my nephew has thrown awful tantrums in public, and they both think it isn't something serious. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister she should have been more reasonable with her baby registry and not expected to get everything for the baby from it? To start, my dad's side of the family isn't really supportive of wedding/baby showers. Papa's side is very much, if you can't afford to raise a baby, don't have one. There are of course exceptions for things like sudden job loss or house fires. Mama's side is a little more lenient, but they don't do registries. Instead, if you have a bridal shower, your mom tells people if you're doing the kitchen in apples or grapes or bats or whatever. And if you're doing a baby shower, people bring clothes, diapers, books, and other little things. It's meant to be more of a party than a gift-giving thing. We're far more likely to have 8 cousins show up each with a casserole or soup after the baby is born than to have people buy a stroller. Mom's side isn't relevant since we haven't seen her since we were kids. I don't know my brother-in-law's side of the family well, but they seem a lot like Mama's with a lot more offers of hand-me-downs thrown in. Well, my sister moved off to the city, and I guess she's used to her friends making these huge registries. She put things on like a $60 bathtub, 4 baby carriers that are $50 each, a pack and play for $250, etc. She then made this big post on Facebook saying that they had worked really hard on the registry and didn't want anything not from it unless it was clothes. On the invitation, she requested a baby book instead of a card and a pack of diapers. So at the baby shower, probably 80% of the gifts were a couple of outfits, a book, and diapers. The few other things were mostly from her friends. Mom bought a car seat. You could see my sister's rage slowly building. She ended up leaving early. She spent the next week calling and texting everybody, trying to figure out why we didn't get her anything she wanted. She made a few posts on Facebook, and one of my brother-in-law's aunts offered to buy a $70 pack and play instead, which she turned down. Now my sister is upset and has been aggravating everyone for 3 weeks. She is having to buy all 6 baby containers, swing, sit-me-up floor seat, etc. she wanted, the $300 baby monitor, etc. And everybody's telling her that that's what you do when you have a kid, that you can't expect people to buy everything. Last night, after trying to be patient for over an hour, I snapped. Look, the health department would have mailed you birth control for free. You're having a baby, so it's you guys' job to get the stuff for it, nobody else's. In a way, I'm feeling kind of guilty because she probably wanted to vent. But at the same time, how do you get pregnant and not expect to buy the stuff for the baby? Edit. Someone pointed out that I wasn't clear about my sister's financial situation, or whether or not the back and play was going to be used instead of crib due to constraints. She and her husband live in a townhouse. It has a 2nd bedroom which is being turned into a nursery. There was a crib on the registry that does not convert to a larger size. Edit 2. Mom is our stepmom. Dad remarried when we were teens. She's always seen us as her kids, and we've always called her Mom. I didn't even think to clarify. Sorry for the confusion. Edit 3. She opened the gifts at the shower, and the clothes ranged from newborn to 18 months. The diaper table was full of things from newborn through size 4. I don't know if that's relevant to anything, but a lot of people seem to think we only got her newborn sizes. Now for the comments. She doesn't need a $60 bathtub. Sinks exist. 4 carriers? Is she going to theme them to what the baby is wearing? She was highly excessive in her asking. Sure, you could have been a little kinder in your wording and just said she can't expect everyone to buy her every single item. But she's the one who is asking people to spend tons of money when she doesn't need all those items. Plus, to turn down a pack and play because it's not the exact $250 she wanted? How rude. Baby doesn't need a $250 one. A $70 would have worked the exact same way. She's expecting everyone else to finance a designer baby and harassing people when they don't want to. Do not buy her anything. I'm giving birth this Thursday, and we are fairly wealthy. I bought most of the baby stuff on Facebook Marketplace and kept my list to the essentials. Yeah, sinks exist, and there are even anti-slip mats you can buy for $10 to make it more comfy for your baby. I got 6 newborn onesies. We have no idea what his size will be. As soon as he's out, we will get more stuff. I don't get people making the whole having a baby about the material of things. They just need and love, not a $5,000 nursery. Babies don't care. Not today, home. Suggest that she add a freaking clue to her registry, and people might be willing to chip in and buy her that. Not today, home. Also, maybe it's the culture clash, US to UK, but am I the only one here who finds gift registry tacky? Like if you throw something like a baby shower or wedding, it's to celebrate the important events in your life with the people you love. And if you can't afford it and are relying on guests' gifts to make up the deficit, don't throw it. Gifts should be at the discretion of the invitees and not mandatory, a gesture or token of appreciation. Giving people a list of pre-approved stuff you want them to get you seems sort of classless and greedy. Or am I way off? Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for not setting up a college fund for my sister-in-law's newest baby like I did for others? Bro passed leaving Amy and 2 kids behind. I set up a fund for my nieces for college or whatever reasonable path. Then 2 years later, Amy ends up with twins from a one-night stand. I love them and set them both a fund up too, since no dad in picture. Then Amy marries John. She always said she was done with kids. So it came to my surprise when they said they were trying, as John wants more kids and doesn't believe in birth control. I am their accountant and can fully say that they can't afford it. John is a disabled child, and just above 55% of his checks go to supported medical bills. A week later, I privately sit down Amy and tell her that I have a family myself now and am managing 6 funds. So I just want to give a heads up that I can't afford to start another one. She protested, saying that she expected the fund to be split between all her children. I explained that's not how it works, and each kid will have roughly the same amount in their funds at 17. Oldest is going to school next fall, and is promised full costs. Amy then points out she has a partial social security, so I can shift that money. But I said no, because it's hers. Same applies to all kids. Amy curses, then kicks me out, and goes around telling everyone I'm being cruel and punishing them for being poor. But I never even mentioned her finances. She also said I was favoring bro's kids. Mom yelled at me because I can pay for my wife to lay around at home with a babysitter while willing to punish a kid for just existing. My wife stays at home doing a PhD program with our 2 toddlers, so hence a babysitter 2 times weekly. Turns out Amy is pregnant, and this made everyone hate me more, because I ripped out the security from under her. That I stressed her out, and if the baby is harmed, it's on me. That I'm the most well-off, and it wouldn't even sting. Am I the a-hole? I don't want to punish an innocent child, but I don't see why it's on me. I didn't know she was already pregnant and tried to tell her beforehand. But since now it's a reality, everyone is telling me I already hate my future niece/nephew. Edit. The twins are 8 now, so it's not like Amy's just popping out children back to back. She always said she didn't want any more kids. And so I was dumbfounded that she was trying. Mine is like helping fix a roof or something odd. I do not provide financial support to Amy. The funds are not usually talked about. It is because my mom mentioned something when she heard they were trying. And so I talked to her just to make sure, and slickly put in her brain she can't afford a kid without saying it directly. Not today, home. You are an angel for taking care of her twins after your brother passed. It is not on you to provide financial security for her children she cannot fully provide for herself. Right. They're not his/her blood, but it was done anyway. Not today, home. This is a hard one. I can see how this would build resentment, but at the same time, do you really want to finance her next 5 kids? Because if her idiotic husband really doesn't believe in birth control, that's at least the number of kids they'll have. You've been plenty generous. Your brother's kids are one thing. You were kind with the one-night stand twins as they didn't ask to be born. Now she has a new husband, and this is his child, and he should step up. You have zero responsibility. Not today, Hall. I would make sure sister-in-law has zero control over the funds. I'm guessing her security is also trying to get monthly stipends from the kids. I fully control the funds. It will be directly paying the fees to whatever tuition or play/path they choose to take. If there's money left over, they will get it after graduation. Am I the a-hole for refusing to attend my best friend's wedding after she replaced me as a maid of honor because I'm too fat, I'm pregnant, and asking her to pay me back for everything? I, 27 female, have been best friends with Claire, 28 female, since high school. When she asked me to be her maid of honor, I was thrilled and went all out to make her wedding special. I paid for the bridal shower, the bachelorette party, a weekend trip, decorations, and other expenses, spending several $1,000s. While it was a lot of money for my husband and me, I wanted to make her big day perfect because she's like family to me. 2 months ago, I shared that I'm 4 months pregnant. Claire congratulated me but started acting distant afterward. She excluded me from conversations about the wedding and made passive comments about how hard it is to coordinate when people are distracted. I brushed it off, thinking it was just wedding stress. A few days ago, she sat me down and told me she didn't want me in the wedding anymore. Her reason? I'm getting too fat, and she doesn't want me in the pictures. She said she has a specific vision for her wedding, and I no longer fit it. I was devastated. I asked if this was about my pregnancy, but she insisted it wasn't personal. She said she was replacing me as maid of honor with another friend who fit her aesthetic. I told her if I wasn't in the wedding, I wouldn't attend at all. I also handed her the receipts for everything I'd paid for and told her she or her fiancé needed to reimburse me, since I'd only spent that money as her maid of honor. Claire flipped out, calling me selfish and accusing me of trying to ruin her wedding. She said it was tacky to ask for the money back, and that expenses like these were my responsibility as maid of honor. I reminded her that she removed me from that role, so those expenses were no longer mine. Since then, Claire, her fiancé, and even her family have been spamming me with calls and texts. They're accusing me of being petty and overreacting because of pregnancy hormones. They're also saying I should have just let it go and written off the money because weddings are stressful. And Claire didn't mean to hurt me. My husband has been incredibly supportive and says I did the right thing. He is furious at how Claire treated me and agrees that I shouldn't be out thousands of dollars for a wedding I'm not part of. I feel heartbroken and humiliated by someone I thought was my best friend. Still, the constant backlash has made me second-guess myself. Am I the a-hole for standing up for myself and asking for reimbursement? Should I have just quietly stepped aside? Not the a-hole. She said it was tacky to ask for the money back. She didn't want me in the wedding anymore. Her reason? I'm getting too fat, and she doesn't want me in the pictures. Bruh. It sounds like a big joke. I didn't think stuff like this actually happened in real life, and I never expected it from her. Sounds to me like she's afraid of being upstaged main character syndrome. She also waited till it was close enough to the wedding where the majority of the expensive costs were paid for before releasing OP from her duties. You're damn right to ask for that money back. Take her to small claims if you have to. Threat her with that too. She's literally thought she could tell OP she's getting fat. Weird how she uses that term and not pregnant to describe OP, and OP would just roll over and take it without a word. The way her family's behaving proves that they know exactly what she said to OP also. Good for you for standing up for yourself. You are not the a-hole at all. Not the a-hole, and I wouldn't be calling her a friend. It's just hard when she completely changed out of nowhere. I have never seen this side of her before. Not the a-hole. Glad your husband has your back. Both of you can enjoy some quiet time instead of Claire's aesthetic. You shouldn't be out thousands of dollars, but unfortunately you are now out one friend. She has chosen photos over friendship. There's nothing wrong with asking for reimbursement for the money you spent in a role you were fired from. If necessary, file in small claims court and be petty. do it before the wedding to recoup your money. Pregnancy hormones have nothing to do with this. They're claiming you're overreacting because they want you to believe it isn't a big deal and that you should let it go. Translation, they don't have the funds to repay you. If Claire didn't mean to hurt you, she wouldn't have done what she did, and she would be apologizing profusely. Neither of those things happened because she's not truly a friend. Just remember, photos first. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to babysit my sister's kids after she publicly called me irresponsible in front of our whole family? I, 26 female, I'm the younger sister to Emma, 34 female, who has 3 kids, 7, 4, and 2. Emma has been a single mom for the past few years, and while I respect her hard work, I feel like I've been roped into this unofficial, secondary parent role without my consent. Even though I love it at times, it is stressful. Over the past year, she's come to rely on me as her primary babysitter. She often asks me to watch the kids at the last minute because she needs a break or wants to run errands without the stress. I've canceled my plans more times than I can count to help her out. And I did it because I wanted to, because she is my sister. But last weekend, I finally had something I was looking forward to, a close friend's birthday dinner. I'd been helping her plan it for weeks, and we were supposed to have this amazing girls' night at a fancy restaurant, followed by karaoke, something I never get to do because of how much I'm helping my sister. On the day of the party, Emma texted me in the afternoon, asking if I could watch the kids for a few hours so she could recharge. I told her I couldn't because of my plans and expected her to respect that, which she seemingly did. I assumed she found someone else or worked it out in the end. Then, fast forward to the next evening at a family dinner. Out of nowhere, Emma goes off on me in front of everyone, saying I'm irresponsible, self-centered, and that I have no idea what it's like to be a real adult, since I don't have kids of my own. She even went on about how she sacrifices everything for her kids while I party around like a teenager. I was mortified and honestly heartbroken. This was in front of our parents, aunts, uncles, everyone. After dinner, I told her that I was done babysitting until she could apologize and start treating me with respect. She's been furious, saying I'm abandoning her and that family should be there no matter what. It made me feel really bad, and I felt as if I had abandoned her as a sister with this demand. My mom, of course, took her side, saying I should let it go because Emma's stressed and just needs my support as she is a single mom and yada yada yada. I get that being a single mom is tough, and I am her sister, and she has helped me out a lot too. But on the other hand, I feel like I'm being guilt-tripped and treated like her backup parent, not even a babysitter who can have other plans. Am I the a-hole for saying enough is enough and setting this boundary? Not the a-hole. Her being a single mother is her damn problem, not yours. There is no way I would ever babysit for that woman ever again. She even went on about how she sacrifices everything for her kids while I party around like a teenager. Of course she's the one that has to sacrifice. It's her responsibility as their parent. How is the fact that you party even relevant to her kids? You've already done more than enough to babysit for your niece/nephew's OB. I know the kids know and love you for that too. Never babysit for her again and move out as soon as you can. Your family openly takes you for granted. Your sister thinks you're her servant, not the a-hole. Setting boundaries is crucial. Your sister needs to realize you have your own life too. Don't let her guilt trip you into babysitting again. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Babysitting doesn't mean signing up for lifelong on-call backup. If Emma wants support no matter what, maybe she should start with respecting your plans. She can't roast you in front of the family and then expect you to be her go-to. Boundaries aren't abandonment, they're just healthy. Edit. Okay, so lots of people in the comments encouraged me to set up firm boundaries. Lots of great advice here in my opinion. Everyone's so positive and reminding me that boundaries are key. Now I see that I really do need to hold firm on them. Setting limits is something I've struggled with, especially when it's family. No apology from her yet, but I'll stay strong. Thanks so much for the support. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not doing everything to help my parents afford treatments for my brother? When my brother 18 male was 4 and I 16 male was 2, he was diagnosed with blood cancer. He'd been sick for a little while, and our parents initially thought he had a flu or something. Because they didn't get him the help right away, they felt guilty and devoted every second to him from that point forward. It was supposed to be until he was cancer-free, but by the time we were 8 and 6, and they had become so used to focusing only on him. I spent most of my time with an uncle who lived nearby or with neighbors when my brother was undergoing treatment. My uncle didn't like having me around, and the neighbors were busy with their own kids, so I got used to being ignored and forgotten. When my brother was finally back home and I wasn't sent away anymore, I was already used to being alone and taking care of myself. My relationship with my parents has never been close, and it's the same with my brother. Both of us feel more like only children, and he's given me a hard time for telling our parents that I'd like some of their attention too. They always told me he needed it more, and he considered me a drama queen. The last time I said anything, which was about 3 years ago, he said he didn't realize boys could be as dramatic as girls. My brother's cancer came back 5 years ago, but it was dealt with early, and he didn't have treatment for very long. After that, he seemed better in all ways. He had more energy, his appetite was better, and he was doing things he'd never had the energy to do before. About a year ago, my mom's parents moved closer to us and they focused on me, which bonded us quickly. I now spend a lot of time with them, even spending the night there sometimes. I also shifted my focus completely away from my parents and no longer sought their attention. In July, my brother's cancer returned again, but it's different this time. I wasn't given much information. Treatments are complicated, and there's talk of him possibly going to Germany and maybe Switzerland for treatments we don't have here. My parents have been working more hours to help pay for this, and I've been spending even more time with my grandparents. My absence wasn't noticed until my parents wanted me to help raise money and maybe get tested if necessary. They suggested I could start fundraisers and get a job. I already have one, but my parents never noticed. I told them I wasn't going to help with that, and that it was up to the 3 of them to figure it out. They yelled at me, but my grandparents stepped in and said I wasn't responsible for this. My parents argued that it's about helping family, my own brother, and asked how I could even consider not doing everything to help. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. First off, you deserve the same love and attention from your parents, who are morons, not only for ignoring you but expecting you to help pay for treatments. You are a child, not the parent, so it's not on you to do anything of that BS. Second, I don't care what condition your brother has. That doesn't give him the right to treat you badly or act like a spoiled brat. He should have been called out on that long time ago and put in his place. And third, the he's your brother/your family card is a load of crap. You don't owe him or anyone else a thing, but he and your parents are a-holes and need to get over themselves. Just like they need to realize what crappy people they are for doing all of this to you. And parents wonder why glass children abandon them when the golden child is no longer available. My sister was very sick growing up. It was always, your sister comes first until she's healthy. But when she was healthy, they did their best to make it up to me. Even when she was sick, they rarely, if ever, missed my events. If my sister acted out, as all kids sometimes do, she was lectured, just because you're sick doesn't mean you can act like an a-hole. I think most compassionate siblings understand when their brother or sister is sick. It's okay to take a backseat occasionally, to be understanding occasionally, but it's never okay to be second for so long that they don't even notice you're missing. Your parents succeed in dealing and taking care of your sick sister and raising her without basically abandoning you. Kudos to them. Last story. Am I the a-hole for asking for the unborn child's child support? My partner, 31 male, and I, 32 female, have been together for 2.5 years. We've known each other for over a decade, and our friends and family get along well. He proposed to me in March this year. I got pregnant in July, and we got married in August. In August, we started arguing a lot. I wasn't working at a time, and my partner had just started a new job. The hormone changes impacted me mentally, and I was depressed. My partner is Canadian, and we were living overseas. He wanted to spend time with his friends in Toronto, and even though I needed him to stay with me during my difficult time, he left. I joined him as soon as my OBGYN cleared me to travel. Things felt a bit better after arriving in Toronto. We stayed at his father's house in the suburbs because his actual house was rented out to his friends. We talked about starting our life back in Toronto. He seemed happier surrounded by his family and friends, and I decided to give birth in Canada. But there were issues with housing, visas, and healthcare. I asked my partner to sponsor my PR so I could stay in Canada with him. He said he would, but he never did. During this time, my needs for emotional support, visa support, and financial support were never met. He started stonewalling me and told all our mutual friends his negative perspective of me. Since he's Canadian and knows our friends longer than I do, those people never asked me how I was doing or even congratulated me on my pregnancy. I learned that one friend even expressed sympathy for my partner, telling him he was sorry he had to go through a rough time. I couldn't believe how I was treated within this community. I gave my partner an ultimatum to complete the visa paperwork, specifically the parts that required a sponsor's input. He tried but didn't finish it on time, saying he didn't expect it to be so difficult. I thanked him for trying but lost hope in staying there any longer without having my basic needs met. On the day of my flight, he told me he had started taking SSRIs. We had been planning a wedding in October outside of Canada, and I suggested he focus on his health. So we ultimately canceled the wedding, which I had planned alone while he watched movies with his buddies. He then began shutting down completely. We started couples therapy, and he told our therapist that he enjoyed a time apart and wanted to consider separation. I was devastated. I feared abandonment, especially since I was carrying his baby. He was no longer there when I needed him, and he didn't even call me on my birthday. A week later, he went out to Halloween parties with his friends and later told me how fun it was. He got sick afterward and mentioned he missed me for making him soup. After a month of being stonewalled, something inside me broke. I had respected his pace, persisted despite the uncertainty, and listened to his venting in therapy. But what was I getting out of this relationship? I realized it was nothing. Nothing in this relationship was serving me. I told him I was okay with separating if it made him happier. He responded, "Sure, if that's what you want." At this point, I figured he had commitment issues and disliked taking responsibility for decisions. I told him he should at least be responsible for child support after the divorce. He said I was being ridiculous. Am I being ridiculous? Is a depressed white man allowed to do whatever he wants for as long as he wants and still feel righteous? Not the a-hole. Child support isn't about him. It's about making sure the baby is supported. If he's ready to party but not parent, it's fair to ask him to step up where it counts. Child support is essential for the child's well-being. His right to enjoy life shouldn't overshadow his responsibilities as a parent, especially during such a crucial time. Not the a-hole. I would assume that the child's father is responsible for paying child support in most jurisdictions. Thank you. I believe so too. Really appreciate your input. Am I the a-hole for calling out my kid's future stepmom for treating me like a surrogate? I, 29 female, dated a guy Joe, 30 male, for 3 months before he left me to go back to his ex, Kim, 30 female. Right after we broke up, I found out I was pregnant, and now I'm at 24 weeks. I let him know, and he was ecstatic. Turns out, his girlfriend had fertility issues and would likely never be able to get pregnant naturally, and he's always wanted to be a father. Getting back together was out of the question for both of us, so he's still with his girlfriend. Joe was only allowed at the initial appointment because of COVID-19, and we found out I was having twins. According to Joe, when he told Kim, she had a mental breakdown about her infertility and wanted to talk to me. I met them at their house, and Kim stated that she wanted to be involved in my pregnancy because she would eventually be the children's stepmother. She started telling me that I needed to do a home birth, that I needed to formula feed so that they could have the babies half of the week, that she wanted one boy and one girl, and that she wanted the kid to call her mama since they would be calling me mommy. I shut her down and said I would make the best choices for my children and my body and left. Kim continued to be overbearing and texting me every day about my eating habits, exercise habits, and bitching about how her job wouldn't let her take maternity leave. Then at the virtual genetics counseling appointment, She attended instead of Joe and took over the whole meeting trying to talk about her family history, which wasn't relevant. When it came time for my 20-week level 2 scan, they allowed me one guest, and Joe suggested I take Kim instead of him, which I refused to do. Joe did end up coming, and he found out the gender because I wanted to keep it a surprise for me so we could throw a gender reveal party. I put a pregnancy announcement on my social media, and then she put up an announcement saying they were expecting twins the non-traditional way and how blessed she was. I was irritated, but I kept my mouth shut. Then she threw a gender reveal party and posted it on social media. I wasn't even invited. She also announced that she's having a baby shower. I commented on her posts and told her to stop treating me like a surrogate, that kids weren't hers, and that Joe didn't have any claim or custody of the kids until they're born. I then called Joe and reiterated all of this and stated that I would not be seeing either of them until we went to family court, and that my mother would be my birthing partner. He and Kim and some of her friends and family are saying I'm an a-hole, and her mother even called and insisted I give her one of my babies like this is the parent trap. So am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. OP, I'm not being dramatic in any way when I say this. Get a lawyer now. Keep records of everything. And whatever you do, do not allow yourself to be alone with Kim. Almost none of Kim's behavior is okay. It's in fact disturbing. Block phone numbers. File a police report for harassment if you have to. Keep yourself and your children safe. Edit. I was so disturbed by this post, I had to come back and add that assuming Opie is from the US, she can go through her state bar association's lawyer's diary and find a lawyer that specializes in family law. Get a consultation and take no prisoners. Someone else here commented that you're being treated like an incubator, and that couldn't be any closer to the truth. Stay away from baby daddy as well. This is all very, very shady. And Kim's mother suggesting they split the twins between parents? WTHF. OP was right when she said she wasn't being treated as a mother, but a surrogate. I would go so far as to say the twins are seen as objects as well. OP needs to lawyer up and play hardball about custody. Kim's not going to get better here. She has people enabling her behavior. Not even a surrogate. Surrogates get paid, I believe. She's being treated as an incubator. Yay. Not day-hole. What in the hell did I just read? Lawyer. Court. Document everything and distance the hell away from them. That woman is insane. You need to talk to a family lawyer about how to protect yourself against Joe and Kim trying to gain custody out from under you ASAP. And Kim needs to see a therapist because she really is treating you like a surrogate and it's incredibly creepy. Joe not telling her to stay in her lane is also a serious problem. Not stay whole. Edit. I'm definitely getting a lawyer ASAP. Y'all have scared the crap out of me, but I'm happy you did. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole? Family cut me off financially, wants me home this weekend, so I said they'll have to pay me. I'm a student. My parents set aside some money yonks ago, so when I went off to university, I could afford to go just about anywhere. This wasn't a tuition thing as we're in the UK, so I was always going through Student Finance England, SFE, for that. But some areas of the country are way more expensive than others due to the cost of living, as it gets higher around the best unis. I got into a uni with a very high cost of living. My parents were giving me the money meant for me in installments, just like SFE does. I got a part-time job to top it up. Then I got pregnant. I figured I could keep the baby, provided I didn't suddenly lose any income. My parents then decided to stop giving me the money they set aside for me, saying it was for my education only. I then went over my options again and realized I would have to go full-time to just make ends meet, which I did, but I had to make a lot of compromises to make it work. It's been like this for about a year. I gave birth late last August, making my daughter just over 7 months old. Myself, my parents, my sister have all had our first jabs, and none is fully vaxxed. Dad's birthday is this Friday, and Nan's is on Tuesday. So my parents want me and my sister to drive to Nan's house this weekend to celebrate both events. I've said I can't afford it. It's a 6-hour drive each way, so I'll miss at least 1, most likely 2, days of work. My parents asked me to rearrange what I could. pointing out that I should get money from SFE next month. It actually came a week ago, so I can afford to miss work for a couple days. They said as they haven't met the baby yet, and we've not seen each other in a year, they want to see us now. I said if they want to see us, they can pay me as I can't afford to lose any wages now that they've cut me off. But they said that's incredibly unfair of me, and they can't believe I'd try and guilt trip them over what they did with their money. I offered to FaceTime my sister, who could put me on with Mom, Dad, and Nan if I had time, but they said me mentioning time constraints was further guilt tripping, and I shouldn't expect them to pay for my presence. That I was being tactless and selfish, and that if I attend, they don't want to hear about money. I told them that they've created this situation, and if they're seriously shocked that I can't afford to take cross-country trip with 2 days' notice, then they have no clue what the real world is like for someone who is a full-time student, a full-time worker, and a single mother, so now I have an appearance fee. My sister's boyfriend also got his SFE loan early like it did, so she said that I already have the money from SFE, and that me wanting an appearance fee is greedy and entitled, bordering extortion, and that I'm trying to make our parents feel guilty about money I have no right to. Am I the a-hole? Info. For people suggesting they visit me, I have a 1-bedroom in a not super touristy town. Nan's house is a 5-bed/2.5 bath, less than 2 minutes walking from the beach, down south. The idea behind suggesting Nan's house was that we could all head down on Friday or Saturday, stay over, then head back Sunday. Not day hall. If they want to see you without paying for your travel time, they can travel to you. What they're asking of you is not financially neutral. Making this trip would cause you to lose money you can't afford to lose. You aren't lying by saying you literally can't afford to go unless they help you out. Yeah, people are pissed off by the phrase appearance fee, but that's extraneous information. She can't afford to travel because they backed out on funding her education. They can easily afford to help her travel. She's not the a-hole for pointing that out. Exactly. I'm a full-time student and work part-time and I'm dying. Can you imagine working full-time, plus studying full-time, plus being a full-time parent, plus other adult responsibilities that take time and money? Jesus Christ. Not the a-hole. She's the only true adult in this. Not the a-hole. I realize it's your parents' money to use at their own discretion, but they had to realize cutting you off at your most vulnerable, and at a time of life when you need support most, was going to drive a wedge between you. They don't now get to demand your presence on little notice. I do think it was a little tactless to call it an appearance fee, but whatever you're feeling, if it's bitterness or anger, you came by it honestly. They also don't get to play the "we've never met the baby" card when their actions contributed to your inability to come home as you now work full-time. And frankly, if they really want to foster a relationship with you and your child, they're going to have to understand that you're under a lot of financial constraints. They had a choice to make it not quite as drastic, or they could even have said, "We'll pay for the gas, / we'll give you X amount of money to make up for the travel time." My parents did this a couple times when they wanted me to come to family functions that I just didn't have the money for. They could have given you more time, or if this were really about seeing you and your child, they could have made time or made plans to come to you. Especially since the money was set aside for education and OP is still a student. Full-time, I think? It seems to me the condition of getting the money from parents was to pay for costs of living while getting an education, and OP is still fulfilling that, despite also having a baby. Now the parents aren't holding up their end of the deal. Or they changed their terms too, and you can't have a kid. If their goal was to punish OP for being irresponsible and getting pregnant, congratulations! You now have a responsible child that recognizes that they can't drop work on a whim because they need to provide for their own baby. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for ignoring my mom for 2 weeks now? I'm 19, female and only child, and I grew up with very affectionate parents. They love to kiss me, and I still sometimes sleep on their bed with them. Overall, you could say my relationship with my parents is relatively good. We live in an apartment with 2 rooms, one for me and one for them. A living room, a kitchen/dining area, 1 toilet, and 1 toilet and bath. My story starts about 2 weeks ago. It was just me and my mom inside our home since my dad had to go to work. I was showering at around 6 p.m. after I worked out, and while I usually lock the door whenever I'm inside, I didn't at that time since I was comfortable around my mom and we were both girls anyway. Suddenly, the bathroom door opened. I thought it was my mom, but I found it strange that the door closed immediately as it was opened. I had just applied facial wash when it happened, so I couldn't really see what's going on. When I went finished my bath, my mom suddenly started screaming at me and calling me names. SLUT, you little flirt, etc., etc. I didn't understand her sudden outburst until I saw my dad walking out of their room, and it was then that I realized it must have been my dad who opened the door while I was showering. Although my dad assured my mom and me that he didn't know I was in there and didn't see anything and it was purely accidental, my mom still berated me for not being careful and that it was my fault. Her words really hurt me, which resorted to me ignoring her for more than 2 weeks now. She would try to get my attention and start to touch/hug me again, but I ignore all of them. Am I the a-hole for doing such thing? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole, and frankly, your mom might have insecurity issues if she's worried about your dad doing anything to you with no prior issues happening. All you did was not lock the door, and all he did was walk in and out from what I'm reading. Honestly, if I was the dad, I would be reconsidering my relationship with my wife if she thinks I would want to be inappropriate with my own daughter. WTF? If I was the dad, I'd be extra horrified that not only does she think I'd want to be inappropriate with my daughter, but that it would be the daughter's fault and would warrant calling her an S. Not the a-hole. Sorry, your mom is messed up. She is literally sexualizing the fact that your dad maybe saw a glimpse of you naked. Even if he had seen you fully naked, calling you an S is so freaking wrong. That implies that you are trying to seduce your dad. So for her to be upset about this, she would have to believe that you would get some kind of gratification from your dad seeing you naked, and possibly that your dad would get something out of it too. Not the a-hole, and your relationship with your parents is anything but normal. Stop sleeping with them. Last story is titled, Would I be the a-hole if I kicked out my existing affair baby when she turns 18, even though she is a great child? Hello. This is sort of a different scenario than some of the affair baby posts on here. I knew this girl was not mine from the beginning, and her mother told me while she was still pregnant. She cheated on me because at the time I lost my job and I might have been permanently disabled, so we divorced while she was still pregnant. I somehow was able to defy the odds and recovered almost entirely, found a new job, and became quite successful. I originally did not get custody of my 3 biological daughters, confirmed with DNA testing, because my injury left me unable to take care of them. However, eventually I was able to show I would be the more fit parent, and the custody situation reversed. I got my 3 daughters, and they occasionally spent weekends with their stepdad and mom. This is where the problems began. Stepdad was racist, and my daughters are mixed. I'm black. After obtaining proof of this, their mom lost custody entirely, and even lost custody of their bio child for other reasons. Now, I love my daughters, and they were always sad when their little sister was left crying when they got to go to fun places with me and she did not. My daughters eventually encouraged me to take her along too. Long story short, this girl started getting really attached to me because I was the most stable parent she had in her life, I guess. She tried to call me dad after her dad left her mom and went no contact. While I was able to shut that down, she has referred to me as uncle. Eventually, this girl moved into my house after repeatedly running away to come stay with us. That's a whole other story. But basically, my daughters pressured me all along because they didn't want their sister abandoned without them. Now she's 18 and about to graduate high school. She is, in all honesty, a great kid who never makes trouble for me. However, the sight of her still makes me incredibly sad. I feel like I have put on a face while around her. And I regret keeping the charade up this long because she even gets me Father's Day cards and stuff. I'm not racist, but the fact that I'm black and she is white makes it so obvious she's not mine that it hurts. Ultimately, I probably wouldn't kick her out, but she has expressed that she wants to live here for a few more years while going to a local college. She had a whole detailed plan that she showed me on her birthday, and it would ruin it if I kicked her out. Would I be the a-hole if I asked her to just leave after high school and once she had a job? You typed all that out and you don't even think you're the a-hole here? What the hell? What's happened to all those not your blood, not your problem people? Bunch of hypocrites. Or is it because he's black and is ready to move on from caring for a white half-sister of his actual kids? I'm pretty sure it's because baby mom and stepfather are neglectful and or abusive, not because he's black. If everything was okay at home, half-sister wouldn't have run away that many times. It's not even that. It's the fact that he's been in that role her whole life. Imagine having someone you view as a father dump you at 18. I had that crap happen to me, and it was traumatic. You would be the a-hole. I suggest you get therapy. If she's still a painful reminder after 18 years, you are chasing some very old demons. This is a hard one, because it's obviously painful for you. But yeah, you would be the a-hole. You've said this girl is a great kid. Her sisters love her, etc., etc. It sounds like she sees you as a father figure, so you've clearly done good things for her so far. It would cause her trauma, and probably even more daddy issues than she already may have regarding her bio if you kick her out. I don't know, maybe discuss with your bio daughters if they're old enough? I feel like there may be some resentment from them towards you if you do this. At the end of the day, she had nothing to do with her mother's affair. So if she's a good kid, please don't punish her for something she had no control over, and continue to be the father figure she has grown to love. Am I the a-hole for telling my best friend's ex-wife that she only has herself to blame for him not talking to her anymore? At the beginning of the year, my friend Tom finalized his divorce. It was a messy and toxic situation on both sides. He and his ex-wife, Brittany, divorced after he discovered she had been having a long-term affair with one of her other friends, Steven. Tom is usually a level-headed guy, but the affair and subsequent divorce really broke him. I believe that if it weren't for his two boys, he might have considered ending it all. They share custody with Tom having the boys 60% of the time. The problem now is that he hasn't spoken to Brittany since the divorce was finalized. He picks up and drops off the boys without speaking to her, ignores her at the boys' events, and doesn't interact with her family. I don't think he's doing anything wrong. It's not like he badmouths her in front of the kids. Things escalated when he asked me to pick up the boys because he was unavailable. I agreed and went to get them. When I arrived, Brittany was there as expected. I greeted her and called the boys over. After they got in my truck, she asked if we could talk. Thinking it was about the kids, I agreed. To my surprise, she broke down crying, saying she knew what she did was wrong, but that Tom couldn't continue to be this cruel. She claimed he was ruining the last bit of stability the boys had, and that her family already hated her for the affair, especially her dad who saw Tom as a son. I told her she needed to consider the situation, especially since she was still with Steven. The person who had actually ruined the boys' home was her, not Tom. I ended the conversation by telling her to save her crocodile tears for her F-toy and leave me out of it. I don't think I was wrong. But my girlfriend thinks Tom is taking things too far and that it wasn't my place to get involved. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. My in-laws divorced when my husband, 35 male, wasn't even 2 yet. His mom cheated. They had 50-50 custody his entire childhood. His dad hasn't spoken to her in over 30 years now, aside from one time when Hubs got in big trouble in high school for skipping class, and once right after high school when he had surgery for a hernia. What's fascinating is that neither seem to hate each other, at least now anyway. Mother-in-law has never said anything mean about father-in-law, and while father-in-law has rolled his eyes on occasion, he always asks how she is, and has also never said anything mean about her either. Right now it's fresh, and she's desperate not to be the bad guy. Hopefully she'll grow to accept it eventually, like my in-laws did. I will also note that my husband is totally on his dad's side and not talking to his mother, and said many times that while it kind of bugged him as a kid when he didn't fully understand why mom and dad didn't talk, as soon as he was old enough to digest the situation, it no longer bugged him and it felt like she deserved it. Not the a-hole. While it's important to keep lines of communication open to talk about the kids and their stuff, anything else is just out of kindness. He doesn't owe her anything at all. I would try to be civil around the kids though, especially if they're really young and don't really know what's going on. The boys are 9 and 10. He is semi-civil. Like at events, he won't speak to her if it's not needed. I don't blame him. I'd rather not say anything that risks blowing up at her. As long as he keeps putting the best interests of the kids first, he's good. He's gone. He doesn't speak because there's no reason. She ruined their family. She's gotta deal with it. Let her go cry on her boyfriend's shoulder. Tom doesn't owe her not one bit of conversation. And your girlfriend has a lot of audacity to say Tom is taking it too far. No, he's doing just fine. He's doing nothing wrong, and the fact your girlfriend is taking the cheater's side is mind-boggling. Why the heck should he speak to her? Damn, people are stupid. Right? It's wild how some people think they can just act however they want, and then expect everything to go back to normal. Cheaters feel entitled to your attention and get upset when you start to focus on the more important things. It wasn't your business. Then the cheater asked you to get involved. She made it your business. As for Tom taking it too far, he hasn't bad-mouthed her to the kids or even told them why the divorce happened. That is an A grade in my book, especially when she's dating the affair partner and crying about how her cheated on ex isn't being nice to her. Frankly, this is a red flag for OP's girlfriend's morals. She thinks that simply not speaking to someone who destroyed you is taking things too far. Sounds like a guilty conscience. What is she afraid of being punished for that she would care? Next story. Am I the a-hole for going through with ending things with my ex, even though she was recently assaulted? I, 30 male, am an attorney. I met my ex-fiancée, 26 female, about 3 years ago. After a year of dating, we moved in together and rented a house. This past January, I made partner at my firm and we got engaged. In March, my firm offered me a great opportunity to help open a new office out of state, about 3 hours away. After discussing it, I decided to take the offer. I bought a house at a new location. The lease in our old place was set to end this month, so the plan was for my ex to stay there until the lease was up and then join me. In the meantime, we saw each other nearly every weekend and talked every day. We had a Ring doorbell at the rental house. This detail becomes important later. My ex worked at an art gallery that featured a rotating selection of local artists. In May, I started noticing a man frequently stopping by the rental house, usually carrying a canvas or something similar. He never stayed more than 10 to 15 minutes. When I asked my ex about him, she explained that he was a local artist the gallery was working with, and that he was dropping off pieces for her to take to the gallery. The frequency of his visits started to bother me. My ex assured me that nothing was going on. In July, during one of my visits, my ex was in the shower when he called. I answered and his tone made me uncomfortable. After the call, I looked through their text messages, which were blatantly flirtatious. I confronted my ex, and she turned pale. She apologized profusely and promised to quit her job, assuring me that she would find a new one once she moved in with me after the lease ended. Since I make more than enough to support us, I agreed, and she quit her job. About a month and a half ago, my ex was involved in a car accident. She was driving my old car and was rear-ended. This was strange because she drove her own car over 95% of the time. However, my old car was the only one we had without GPS tracking. She claimed she was alone and headed to a restaurant she liked when the accident occurred. I requested a copy of the police report for the insurance claim, and the location of the accident didn't make sense for where she said she was going. When I confronted her, she admitted she had lied and was actually visiting the artist who lived in the neighborhood. She claimed she was there to see a new painting. I immediately broke up with her. I told her I would continue covering rent through the end of the lease, October 31st, but after that I would no longer provide any support. Our mutual friends have told me that she has been depressed and barely functioning since then. She does not drink because of some experiences she had in high school, but last weekend she went to a party with friends and got very drunk. A man took her to a bedroom and assaulted her. Someone overheard her yelling no, and the man was eventually arrested. This has obviously been a traumatic experience for her. She and our mutual friends are now asking me to offer her support, whether financial or otherwise. She has no job, no prospects, and none of our friends are in a position to take her in. I feel bad for her, but I don't think it's my responsibility to provide the support they're asking for. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. I noticed you wrote she and your mutual friends want you to offer her some support. You already did, then she lied and you broke up. She is no longer your responsibility. Let her family and friends support her. Also, she doesn't drink normally and went to the party with her friends who knew that. Why weren't the friends watching her? They failed her then, and now want to pass her off to you? No. Sorry, it's horrendous it happened, but she betrayed you repeatedly and doesn't get to expect your support or help anymore. Not the a-hole. You broke up with her. The fact you're still paying rent confuses me. It sucks about what happened to her, but it's not up to you to be there anymore. I am on the lease for the rent house, so it is in my best interest to keep paying it, which is why I did it after the breakup. As much as it sucks that happened, not the a-hole. All those friends who are pressuring you needs to look at themselves. Why are they not offering her support, financial or otherwise? X means you are moving on from each other. She broke your trust, and you felt that a reason to end things with her. You also already were nice enough to cover rent to end the lease. To be fair to the friends, many of them are offering support, financial support and otherwise. Issue is that vast majority of them have kids and are teachers, artists, musicians, etc., so their disposable income is quite limited. She quit her job in July. Why wouldn't she move out to be with you at that point? I mean, story-wise, obviously because she was cheating, but logically, y'all could have broken the lease early. Sounds like you're doing well financially. Or she could have moved to you and a friend, neighbor, or one of you could have checked up on the apartment from time to time. We thought about it, but there would have been some logistical issues because new house was being worked on. We had pets at my work schedule. The convo we had was towards the end of July. Her last day at the job was in August. Plus, I was truly reassessing the relationship after all of this. So I was not personally interested in accelerating the timeline. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my cheating wife a day before our daughter's graduation that I would be divorcing her? My wife and I have been married for 20 years, and we have an 18-year-old daughter who graduated from high school a few months ago. About 6 years ago, I discovered that my wife had been cheating on me. The affair lasted for a couple of months. I seriously considered divorce, but my wife was genuinely remorseful. She quit her job, started going to therapy, and committed to all the reconciliation steps I asked for. Ultimately, I decided to stay with her for the sake of our family. For about 5 years, things were actually going well. We had date nights, romantic vacations, and seemed to really love each other. However, in the 6th year, the affair resurfaced in my mind, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I finally made my decision after something my sister said struck a chord with me. She asked, "Would you really want to use the gift of life to spend it with someone who betrayed you so badly?" This conversation happened a few days before my daughter's graduation, and that's when I decided I couldn't do it anymore. The day before my daughter's graduation, I informed my wife of my decision and told her I would be filing for divorce soon. She was shocked and cried a lot, pleading with me to reconsider, but I told her my decision was final. The graduation itself was great, and I was very proud of my daughter. My wife appeared happy, but my daughter noticed something was off and asked why her mom seemed sad and was trying to fake a smile. I told her not to worry about it and to enjoy the day. The following day, I informed my daughter about the divorce. She was shocked and asked how I could do this to her mom right before graduation, suggesting that was why her mom couldn't fully enjoy the day. I told her it was none of her business and reassured her that, regardless of what happens, we will both always love her. Now my wife and I are going through the divorce proceedings. Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. I get it's tough, but the timing was terrible. Your daughter deserves joyful memories, not family chaos on her graduation day. She'll remember this forever. Then told her it was none of her business. Yikes. Yeah, it's definitely her business. He had 6 years to decide, but it had to be the one day prior to her graduation. Definitely you're the a-hole. Are you having a midlife crisis? You forgave her. You waited 6 years? Did a young chick make it so these memories resurfaced? And then you made a graduation about the divorce. Your daughter will forever remember that. Yes, you're the a-hole. My daughter did have a really good time, and the graduation party was great too. We took lots of pictures, and I'm sure she will remember the day fondly. The next day, however, I told my daughter about the divorce because she kept asking me about why her mom seemed so down. I did not really want to break the news to her so soon after graduation, but I really had no choice because she wanted to know the truth. My daughter, of course, was really sad about hearing it, and she even broke down in tears. But divorce is just part of life, and both me and her mom still love her. She is at college now, and I'm sure she'll get over it soon. And I don't really have a midlife crisis for some other woman. I'm not even looking to date, at least for the next few years. My focus is on myself and my family of origin. You're the a-hole. You could have waited a few days. Also, if you were happy, why did you let that line from your sister affect you so much? Are you easily influenced by others? Is the appearance of having always had a perfect marriage so important to you? Is it the point to get a deeper and deeper understanding of the other person and ourselves? It wasn't just that line, and it wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing. I was dwelling on it for the past year or so and talking it out with my sis. She told me that it was finally time I put myself first, and that I deserved to be with someone who would unconditionally love me. Someone who would be there for me through thick and thin, and someone who would never betray me. Last story. Would I be the a-hole? Leaving my wife because she won't even try to find a job. My wife, 41 female, and I, 41 male, were both laid off this past spring, receiving a 60-day notice and severance package. I took a month off and began job hunting at the end of May. By the end of June, I had started a new job with great benefits and a good salary. My take-home pay is about $650 more per month than my previous job. My severance from my last employer will end around Thanksgiving. My wife's severance ended about a month and a half ago, but she hasn't bothered applying for unemployment or making any real effort to find a new job. She usually sleeps until 10 to 11 a.m., then spends most of the day sitting in the living room watching cartoons on her laptop while knitting. I've tried being supportive and gentle, and I've also tried being firm about the fact that we can't afford to live on my income alone. Once my severance ends, we'll be in serious financial trouble. However, she doesn't seem to care enough to put any effort into job hunting, and whenever I bring it up, she shuts down. I'm now at the point where I'm considering taking our 8-year-old and moving out to live with my parents, possibly even filing for divorce because I can't cope with her complete lack of concern for how her behavior is affecting our family financially. Am I the a-hole for feeling this way? Would I be the a-hole for actually leaving? Of course, you're not the a-hole for wanting her to be the same provider as she was before getting laid off. She wouldn't be happy either if it were you sitting on your butt all day while she works. I get taking some time off after a layoff, but not months. She should be actively pursuing a job search and want to get back to work, but she's happy sitting around. So it's almost impossible to motivate someone like that. Tell her she's pushing you out the door with her attitude, and if it were you sitting there playing video games all day instead of finding another job, she'd have the right to be angry at you too. She needs to know you're serious about this and shutting down is not acceptable. She is displaying possible symptoms of depression. A change in employment status is a major life stressor, and doing what she's doing is pure escapism when someone is depressed. You should probably work on getting to the root of the issue instead of just repeatedly asking her when she's planning to get a job. Have you asked her anything about how she's doing or if there's anything she's interested in? I personally think it sucks to rush straight to divorce when things get tough. Because why bother getting married if you're just gonna run when things aren't going how you thought they would? Obviously, you're free to do whatever you feel is best, but maybe there are other issues going on that need to be worked out. Update. Of course, just an hour after posting this, I saw that she was on the state unemployment website applying for benefits. It's a start. After our daughter goes to bed tonight, I'm going to talk to my wife about how stressed I've been feeling and see if I can get her to open up about her own thoughts and feelings.